Hey everyone, Ryan here at Etrailer. Today on our 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee L, we're going to be showing you how to install the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms. Before we get into that though, let's just take a moment, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I figured I'd touch base on one of the big questions that a lot of people ask when it comes to setting up their vehicle to flat tow it. And that's, what parts am I going to need? So there's going to be a total of 5 main components. The first one's a base plate, which allows you to hook up your tow bar, which is the second component. That's the link connecting the motorhome to your vehicle. Third main part will be safety cables, and these are just there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. Keep everything paired together. Fourth main part will be tow bar wiring, and that'll just transfer the lighting functions from the back of your coach to the back of your Jeep. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. What that'll do is apply the brakes in your Jeep whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, bringing you to a more predictable and safe stop. Here's what the front of your Jeep can look like whenever you're not flat towing, and honestly, I don't really think it can look much better. The base plate is just going to come through the small opening there on our front bumper, and not very noticeable at all, especially since the base plate has a more of a matte black style finish. It kind of matches the plastic there and does a pretty good job of blending in. I do like that the base plate already has some brackets attached to it, and that's going to make mounting up your other components like your wiring connector, for example, nice and easy. You're not going to have to deal with other brackets and try to figure it out. So that's definitely a plus. And when you are ready to actually hook up, pretty straightforward. You just pull out these plugs and take your removable arms. We'll put them into the base plate, rotate it about a quarter turn until they lock into position. And we're going to have the same deal over here on the other side. When you're actually ready to connect the tow bar to the base plate, it's another simple process. Just line up the ends there, and you'll put a pin and clip through. That's really all there is to it. The safety chain openings come out far enough to where they're easy to get to. So you'll snap them in place and then set the rest of your stuff up. This base plate is going to be compatible with Blue Ox tow bars as well as some of the other manufacturers. And let's say even if you already have a different branded tow bar and you're wanting to hold on to it and reuse it, but it's not going to line up with this base plate, chances are pretty good you can make it work. And that's because there's a ton of different adapters available that allow you to change out the end here and pair up different brand tow bars to this particular base plate. This is what your flat tow can look like whenever you have everything all hooked up, and I like it. Everything's easy to see, easy to get to, it looks organized. You can take a quick look back here and make sure everything is hooked up and things like that. I do want to mention when it comes to these Jeeps, there's a lot of different submodels of them, and with this base plate, it's going to fit the Overland editions like we have here today. If you have a different submodel, there's a couple base plates available for those as well. So it's really important that you make sure and check what submodel that you got and utilize our fit guide and put that information in and make sure you get the base plate that's going to fit your Jeep. Other than that, at the end of the day, a really nice setup, easy to use and looks about as good as it can. So really can't go wrong. As far as the installation goes, it's definitely time consuming for sure. It's not that it's super complicated, but you are going to have to do some drilling and cutting on some metal and things like that. So be prepared to spend a little bit of time, and hopefully we can give you some insight and make it a little bit easier on you. So if you plan on doing this yourself, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Jeep, and you can go ahead and pop the hood. The very first thing that we need to do is remove this big plastic radiator cover. So with this big cover, it's just going to be held in place by a total of 10 of these push pin style fasteners, so 5 on each half of it. And from this point on, whatever we do to one side of our vehicle, we'll also do to the other side because it'll be set up the same way. But with these, you can just take a flathead screwdriver, kind of pry underneath the head of it, and then get underneath the base and work that whole thing out. And so we'll kind of just work our way around here until we get them all removed. Once you get all those fasteners removed, this will lift off and we can set it off to the side. With the cover out of the way, that'll expose 3 T40 Torx bit screws on each side of our Jeep. So we'll grab our bit and get them pulled out. We can switch out to a 10mm socket now, and right here in the corner, we're going to have a bolt, and we'll pull it out. You can move to your wheel wells now, and it helps if you turn your wheels in one way or the other, give you some more space, but along this edge, there's going to be a total of 5 screws. So we have 3 along here, and then 2 that are kind of tucked in back there. And we'll grab an 8mm socket and get all of them pulled out. You can grab your wheel well liner now and kind of just push that out of the way. And right here where your fascia meets your quarter panel, there's going to be a 10mm head bolt that you need to pull out. We need to unsnap this piece of wheel well trim, maybe about 1/3 of the way up here. And where we're going to be working, I put some painter's tape just so we don't accidentally scratch anything. But with this trim, what I like to do is just kind of grab it and work it a little bit, help loosen it up, get any dirt or anything out. And then coming in from behind, we're going to have some tabs here, which you can kind of pinch in with your fingers. And while you're doing that, kind of pull outward on the wheel well trim piece here. And once I get it kind of a little more free, I'll give you a better look at what I'm doing here. What I was doing with these fasteners, starting at the bottom, is coming in behind there and just kind of pinching them and working this piece out. So you got this style and then this style here. You kind of just pinch those in and pull out. And work your way up, like I said, about 1/3. And I'm just gonna take a rag or something like this and kind of stuff it in there to keep this pulled out away from our vehicle. Moving underneath the front of our Jeep along this edge here. In our case, we have 6 10mm head bolts that run across. Depending on your submodel, your setup might be a little bit different, but either way, these are going to have to get removed. Just work our way all the way across here. To kind of pull this down from our fascia. With that underbody panel pulled down out of the way, that'll expose a push pin fastener on each side of our vehicle. And even though they look a little bit different, they're going to work the same as the ones that we removed before. Just pry down on the head and you're able to pull the base out. Back in our wheel well liner now. we're going to have an electrical connector we need to disconnect. In our case, on our vehicle, we have an identical one over on the passenger side as well. Your Jeep might be set up a little different. You might have another one or two that you can remove. You'll just have to look. But the way these are going to work, you can take a flathead screwdriver and just carefully kind of rotate it to pop that white tab out. And then you can push down on that tab and then pull out and separate that connector. At this point, if you can have someone give you a hand with this, it makes it a lot easier, but we can get our fascia removed. So we'll start at the corner of it, and I'll just do it and then show you. You can kind of push down on the tab. So this very back corner here, I just took my finger and kind of lightly pushed it like that, and that allowed it to just slide right out essentially. And so you do the same on the other side, and then kind of just start to work your way around here. And then once we get to this point, can lift up and over that. And we should be good as far as the electrical stuff goes, which we are. When you do yours, just take it off slowly. If there's something else you need to unplug, go ahead and do that. But we'll go ahead and get this set off to the side. We can get our tow hooks removed. So here towards the front, we're gonna have two 16mm head bolts. Pull those out. And then what you can do is just kind of push this towards the back of the vehicle. And on the very end there's gonna be a big nut that you can unthread. And once you get the nut completely unthreaded, you can just pull straight back on our tow hook to get it removed from our vehicle. We can get our actual bumper beam removed now, and you'll have two 16mm head bolts. One on the top there, and one just like it on the bottom. We'll get them removed. And then we'll switch out to a 10mm, and in that little pocket there's going to be a nut. And this is the last bolt holding this on, or last piece of hardware holding this on, so I'm just applying some pressure to the bumper beam with my chest here to keep it in place. And that's because I already got the hardware on the other side removed, but we should be able to pull this off and get it out of the way, as it will not be reinstalled later. We can get our horns removed for the time being. And so real similar to the other electrical connections that we undid, just push down on the tab, down on the middle, and that will unplug it. Then we're gonna have one bolt holding it in. And on the side, take the 10mm, unscrewed, and we'll set this off to the side for the time being. You can get this air dam trimmed out of the way. That way it'll clear our base plate. There's a diagram of the instructions. I just marked that out. This is somewhat thick plastic. I like to use a multi-tool. You can use a Dremel tool, snips, utility knife, kind of whatever you got. But we'll get this material removed. We can trim out a small portion of our frame now. So in the instructions, there's a diagram, and essentially it's just this portion here, and we'll need to get it removed so our base plate will clear it. This is pretty hard metal. I'm just going to keep using my multi-tool since I have it on hand, but a Dremel tool or cutoff wheel would probably work pretty good as well. Just over here on the driver's side, we're going to need to create a hole right here. That way we have an area where we can put some of our hardware through. And so they tell you where to measure down, 4 inches, and I centered it. I'm going to use a hole saw to create that opening. You're going to have this little stud that comes out, and you can take a pair of vice grips, clamp down on it, and just work it around to try to kind of break it free. We're trying to push it towards the back of our Jeep here to get it to come out. That's why I made the hole first. So when we pop this out, you can pull it out. On both sides of the vehicle now, you're going to have this very large nut where the tow hook went in, and we can remove the nut in this tube. So I just got a big pair of pliers here to break this free. Thankfully it's not super tight. We'll get that nut completely removed. Let's take the tube and push it back and remove it from the vehicle. Where we had made our cuts and everything, you can come back with a file or some sandpaper if you want to, kind of clean them up. And even though this is aluminum, I don't want any bare metal exposed. It'll just kind of help clean up our install look, so I'm just going to come back and hit it with some spray paint. If you can get someone to help you out with this, it definitely makes it easier because this base plate is not light. But what's going to happen is it's going to line up with the factory holes there, and you can take the stock bolts that we pulled out originally, and you see that red stuff on the threads? That's actually Loctite. So you want to put red Loctite on all the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate, but we'll go ahead and just get the top and bottom one started. Working on the side of our base plate now, we're going to have 4 holes in it, these here. We're going to use these as guides. So I got a 1/2 inch drill bit. We're going to drill through that first layer of steel on each one of these holes. Once you got all of them drilled out, you can take a 1/2 inch bolt, put on your Loctite, and then put on a split lock washer. And these are going to thread into these handle nuts. One thing I suggest doing before you even bother with the Loctite or anything, just take your bolts and make sure they thread in there good through those handle nuts. That way the threads are clean and this goes together easy. But we want to start with this hole here. So if you remember that hole that we drilled out on the front, the nut is going to go through that, and then you're wanting to line it up with this hole down there, and we just want to get it started hand tight, just a few threads on it. With this just started, we can take this spacer block, I guess you'd call it, and you see how one end is slotted like that. This is actually going to drop around that bolt in between the frame and our base plate. So we'll take it from the top, work that in, then you'll take another handle nut and bolt and flat washer, run it through the base plate, through our spacer, and we'll get the handle nut in and start it as well. For the two other holes right here, you're just going to take that same hardware combination, you know, your handle nut and your bolt and your split lock washer, put them right through. For these, you know, you're not going to have to worry about dealing with the spacer block or anything like that. So we'll get both of these started hand tight as well. To get everything started hand tight, come back with a 3/4 inch socket and snug everything down. I need to make sure and come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. Since we're done with the handle nuts over here on this side, the handle portion, sometimes you can just kind of work off. If not, you can come back with a pair of snips and get them cut. So at this point, I went ahead and reinstalled our horns the opposite way that we removed them, and then put the tube and this big nut back through the frame, again the opposite way. Then you can take your tow hooks, put those through, and then of course on the back side of it, you know, you can put a couple threads on this nut to get it started. And really the only difference with this, if you notice right here, there's kind of a little piece of metal that comes out right there, and that's actually going to line up with the indentation in the base plate. So you kind of push it back until it falls in, if you will. And then for this hole, you can take the smaller bolt, put on a split lock washer and a flat washer, run that through. We'll get it started with a nylon lock nut. Then we can focus on the bottom one, which will be similar. You're going to have these smaller handle nuts here, and you're going to have to put a bend in it to get it to line up. And that's going to go up through the base plate there. And we'll get this one started as well. Get this one as tight as you can by hand, where we know this isn't going to move. And then the larger nut on the back, just snug that up by hand while you're at it. With all this hardware in, grab a 9/16 socket and wrench here. Snug that top one down. Hit the bottom one. And then we can change out for our torque wrench and get it all torqued down here. Now you can take your safety cables, and there's a D-link here, and essentially you just take the cable, wrap it around the frame, it comes out there, and then connect them to the base plate using that D-link. And one thing I like to do is just take zip ties and kind of zip tie it up here and there. That way it doesn't really move and you won't hear it kind of clanking around whenever you're going down the road and hitting bumps. Now you can move to the back side of your fascia, and we're gonna have this little foam piece that's here in the middle. There's gonna be 4 clips, just like these here, holding that foam on. And we can get them removed. Kind of do it however you want. I think I'm just gonna cut them because they're kind of a pain, to be honest with you. I'm just gonna take a pair of snips and open one side up. We can get away with this because we're not gonna be reinstalling this foam piece. So I'll do that to all 4 of these. And we can get this foam removed from the fascia. And at this point, it'd be a great time to install some of your other flat towing components, like your wiring, braking system, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. And I say it because with the fascia off, just so much easier. You got a lot more room to work. So I'm gonna get that done, and then we can come back to the fascia. Eventually, we're gonna have to hold it up here and kind of see where we need to cut to get it reinstalled. So we're ready to deal with our fascia now, and what you can do is just kind of hold this up against the front of your vehicle and see what material you need to remove, if any, or whatever the case may be. And what I found, this little bottom section here, this honeycomb section, that's where our base plate's gonna come through on our vehicle. And I don't really see a need to cut this out, really. I think I can just remove this and get the same thing accomplished. So to do that on each side, got those little fasteners, we'll pry them off. And then you can kind of push these tabs out and work your way down. And this whole piece can now be removed. With that piece removed, we should be able to get our fascia back into position. So we'll do that, and if I have to make any adjustments or anything like that, we'll come back and show you what we did. So getting this in place roughly, everything actually fit really well. I think it was the right move, just taking that whole piece out instead of trying to cut little slivers out of it and everything else. So I'm happy with it. Didn't have to really do anything extra. And now at this point, we'll just get our fascia re-secured the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox base plate kit on our 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee L.